Hi, welcome back to our Photoshop series on our tutorials from Adobe Creative Suite 2. We have arrived at lesson 5, working with selections. Today in our lessons we are going to be working with selections, and that basically allows us to either work with certain parts of the picture or exclude certain parts of the picture as we are using retouch tools. So we'll learn how to put in marquees, to duplicate, move selections, to use keyboard and mouse combinations as we are making selections, to adjust or add to selections, rotate or transform, to use multiple selections, and then to work with or manipulate pixels within or outside of the selections. As you can see, I have already opened Lesson 5 Start off of the U drive, and turning to page 133, we're going to start with the magic wand tool. Just give you a quick look. You can see that this is the finished product, and our starting product is a number of selections that have been pasted into one layer in this lesson. I'd also like to point out to you that I'm going to do things a little bit different than a textbook. I'm going to be using multiple layers to preserve the selections as I make them. I think that's better for you in the long run also, as it allows you to further edit pictures in a way or transform your pictures after you have worked with them. If you work with a single layer and, for instance, you put this rose on top of the book and then want to move it off again, you're going to have to reselect it and you'll have lost the pixels that were in underneath the book. If you use layers, you have the flexibility to keep on working with it. Okay, so selection with the magic wand tool. We are going to begin with selecting this 5 on page 134. The magic wand tool is in the top area of the main toolbar. It has a tolerance setting up in the top, and it has add, subtract, and a new selection. I'm going to set this one to new selection at this point. I'm going to select and change the tolerance to 70 as the book asks, and I'm going to also zoom in on this 5 here because it's easier to work with things when you can see them. So zoomed in, selection tool, 70, click. You can see that some of it missed, so I'm going to click add to selection. You could also hold shift and clean up that spot and clean up that spot. Once I have a selection, Control C for copy, Control V for paste. It will release the selection tool and it will paste the number 5 in a new layer sitting here. If you wanted to, you could double click this layer and rename it 5. That would be entirely up to you, but that's something you could do. And then we can move on to page 136. I'll use my navigation window, scroll up and pick up the flower. So you notice when we selected the 5 that we selected pixels within the image. Sometimes it's easier to select the background around an image and then remove that background from the image. That's what we're going to do with a rose. So we're going to cordon off or separate this area using the masking tool. Then we're going to take away from selection. So we're going to use our magic wand tool, take away from selection. And this white is a very, very solid color. So I'm going to turn down my tolerance on here to 32 as the textbook suggests in step 3. And then pick. Oh, I had added to selection. That's not good. So let's undo that. We're going to need to take away from selection. So I'm going to set a new selection, or select, deselect to start that one over again. marquee to cordon off the area, take away from selection, magic wand, tolerance 32. No pixels were selected. Why? The reason? We're sitting in our 5 layer, and there are no pixels in the 5 layer. If you want to select pixels from the background, you need to be clicked on the background layer. Keep that in mind as we keep on working through those selections. So I'll draw my box one more time, and then remove the pixels from around, and there we go. So we have our rows, Control C, Control V, new layer, and I will not rename it this time. We're going to be selecting the oval or this ellipse here. So I'll scroll down to that so you can see it. I'm going to be using the marquee tool. And I need to remember also to go back to my background layer. So set a new selection, background layer. There's a couple of ways of doing this. So the ellipse tool is turned on. We're going to begin to drag from the top left down to the bottom right. Obviously, I'm not lined up well. I can adjust or shift slide the mask over if I press and hold the space bar. I'm going to try to focus in on getting the top first. I'll let go of the space bar, and I'll see if I can resize it a little bit to get the left side, hit the space bar, just kind of tweak it in. And when you have things properly selected, then you can release the mouse button and copy paste, and your selection is done. Selecting from center point, page 142, we're going to be picking up this globe. Going to be using the ellipse tool. This ellipse is this thing is actually round. We're going to click inside the middle of it and drag to the outside. Then we're going to hold Alt. And Alt sets the selection to the center. And you notice I'm a little bit off center here. So I'm just going to hold the Shift key here and pull it over just a wee bit. And I only want the globe. I don't want the holder around it. So I've got it. I'm going to let go of the mouse. There we go. Control C, Control V once. No area selected. Okay, click background. Control C, Control V once, twice, and 3 times. Because if you remember, on our sample there were 3 globes up on the top area there. Now the textbook also wants us to take one of these, or all 3 of them actually, and invert the selection. So I'm going to be on layer 5, image, adjustments, and invert. We have the multiple copies already. If you wish to go to the other layers to invert them, you can. Our next step, using lasso tools on the pen. Let's see if we can make this just a little bit wider so you can see more of the pen here. There are 2 tools in here underneath the lasso tools. One is a polygon lasso, basically allows you to, or basically draws a line from click to click as you work your way around an object. Works good for straight-sided objects. There's also a magnetic lasso tool. It works well for picking up color changes. So I'm going to click and start it. And I'm just going to run this magnetic lasso tool along the tool, and it jumped off there, so I'll backtrack a little bit. And you can see that if the colors aren't really defined, it does become hard to pick them up. So I'm just going to bring it down here. I'm going to work this selection in here. And just click a little more often along the sides. And I'm going to close that selection. I'm going to come in here because I have add already on my tool. I'm just going to work my way by clicking a bunch of times along this area. And I'll hit enter to finish that, because enter will automatically close a selection. I'm going to start there. I'll work my way to the edge. Looks like I'm going to have to do a bunch of clicking there. Maybe that's more hassle than it's worth. So I'm going to finish this area with the magnetic lasso tool. And then I'm going to switch to the polygon tool. Add to selection, polygon tool. Start inside previous selection. Work my way around. Close the selection. And the pen has been largely selected. Control C. Won't work because we're not in our background layer. Background layer, Control C, Control V, and our elements are largely selected. I'm going to zoom out a bit, and then we can start working with our layers here. So our pen is supposed to lie along here. So I'm going to switch to my move tool, move my pen up, and we're going to go image, transform, or edit transform. I'm going to rotate this. And when you're done rotating, you hit enter to execute the rotate command. I need my oval layer, so click on the layer, still on the move tool, bring it to there. I'd like my rows. I believe it's supposed to go on the area here. We want the number 5 up on the top. I think it looks a little big, so I'm going to go edit, transform, scale, make it a little bit smaller. Hit enter to execute the command. And then I need my globes. There's one. And by the way, layers stack. So the top one in the stack will also be in the top. Let's see, we'll move layer 4 here and bring it up over layer 5. Layer 5, edit, transform scale. The textbook wants it to be a little bit bigger, so we'll do that. I'm going to hold shift so that it increases proportionately. If you look in the options bar at the top, you can see that the width and the height have grown to about 110%. Hit enter to execute. Be careful with doing this. Shifting to this globe on layer 3. Be careful with doing this because you haven't improved the resolution on that when you scale it up. You only have as many pixels as you have there in that image, and when you make things bigger, all you're doing is actually making your squares bigger. So one over on top of the other one, in around the corner a bit, and there you go. Last step is the magnetic lasso tool and the lock. So I'm going to zoom in on the lock. I'm going to show you something in here that the textbook doesn't really show, because sometimes a magnetic lasso can be tough to use. So magnetic lasso in around the lock. If you think that the line might stray a little bit, feel free to click. Work your way around. I always like to click on points and corners. Close the selection. Not bad. You can see that I'm a bit out here. So, to show you something that the textbook does not mention, if you look in the bottom of the tool, there's a standard mode button and there's a quick mask mode. I'm going to click the quick mask mode. I am going to grab the eraser, and it just works in here for the quick mask. There's my selection. Opacity and flow rate set at 100%, so that's a good thing. And I'm just going to touch this up. If you make a mistake on here, you can use the paintbrush tool. And make sure it's a paintbrush, not an airbrush. Better pull that tool size down a bit. And set the mode on normal. You can quickly touch up a couple corners in there, and that should do it. Switch from quick mask to standard mode. Go to my background layer, Control C, Control V. Zoom out, and let's move the lock over there. Oh no, apparently the lock has disappeared. Well, remember what I said about layers. Layer stack, top of the layer. The top layer is on the top, and the lock is on the bottom, so I'm just going to push this lock layer up to the top, and there it is. Last thing the book asks you to do is run a crop. I would suggest, if you're going to do that, that you would save this composition as a JPEG or something, and then crop that JPEG, and that allows you to, if in the future, if you wish, to manipulate those elements again and reproduce the drawing if required, or edit the drawing if required. Thank you for watching Lesson 5. I hope this was helpful for you, and next lesson we'll be looking at layer basics in Lesson 6. Have a great day.